Hi, my name is Jimmy Williams with NFL Draft Diamonds. And here with me today, I have yet another diamond in the rough I'd like you guys to meet. His name is Jalen Williams, an edge rusher out of Missouri State. Nice to have you today, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, buddy, obviously, been a part of Missouri State, obviously in really one of the more tougher conferences in all of FCS, playing against some excellent competition. And obviously, being part of that competition, getting 6.5 sacks, pretty decent season for you. So let's go ahead and get started. Jalen, introduce yourself and let's get going.
Yeah, so I'm Jalen Williams. I played in Missouri State the last 6 years, and I'm originally from Overland Park, Kansas, so it's right outside of Kansas City. So it wasn't too far of a drive for me to come down here and be able to compete the last 6 years.
Neat. So, 6 year guy staying at the same institution, certainly not something we see every day these days because most guys just aren't sticking around, man. Like, they're, jumping ship, transferring out, but yet we have here a very loyal guy. Again, a hometown sort of guy, for Missouri State. Um, uh, Attended Bishop Miage High School in the Kansas City area. Talk to me a little bit about the early days for you, but even before we get there, how long actually have you played football?
Yeah, so I played flag football in kindergarten and then picked like tackle football up right after that in like third grade. So I've roughly been playing eight. So I was eight, probably eight, nine. So about 16 years almost.
The 16 years, and obviously, buddy, I mean, I know this is the sport that you love the most, and what is it about football that you love?
Um, Honestly, being able to just go out there and kind of win every day, whenever, like whatever that is, whether that's the weight room, a mat drill, or just being able to go out there and compete and win and do the best of what I can do, whether that's beating myself or competing against someone across from me or right next to me, and being able to have that opportunity. You don't really get that all the time. So I think football is unique in the way that it gives you that opportunity to kind of prove yourself every day.
Gotcha. Jalen, you seem like a little, mild mannered of a guy. And I feel that also football might just be an outlet where like, he gets on the football field and he becomes something else. He becomes like a monster that he can take out all of his frustrations and aggressions on. And so, hey, it's not a bad idea to utilize football as such. But
Not at all.
yeah, man. Obviously, like we had already mentioned, went to Bishop Miage High, and very prestigious school, man. During your time there, won several state championships, and really mostly known for like a very high-powered offense. I was looking up some of the guys you played with. I guess the one of the better guys to come out of that school in Graham Mertz. But
Hmm.
talk a little bit about your days in high school.
Yes, so I grew up in Overland Park, so that's probably about where I live is probably about 15, 20 minutes away from my high school. So um I knew that I wanted to go to a high school that was really pretty well known for football. So going there was like a no brainer. And then I figured out that some of my childhood friends like Graham and some of the other guys that I played with were going there. So it was kind of a no brainer for me to like go there because I thought we had a good class. We'd have a good class going in there, and we'd go and actually get to play early. And that was another huge component to it as well, as like being able to play early as a high schooler was one of the few things that I looked at when choosing high school, and that was my best bet. So I ended up going there and learned a lot as I grew as a player there, and I think that's kind of translated into who I am on the field now.
Yeah, and I mean, I figure with a lot of great talent, there at Bishop Miage, I mean, you had to have a lot of college recruits who are sniffing along the sidelines,
Mhm.
trying to figure out, which one of these guys they're going to take with them. And so, talk about your early recruiting because, like, when I was looking at your recruiting, it seemed as if it was going to be somewhere in the Missouri Valley. But talk a little bit about that as you were coming out of high school.
Yeah, obviously you have like the local like power fours or power fives. Like you had the KU, K State guys, and like some of the Mizzou and Iowa State. They have a huge recruiting presence in Kansas City. So I talked to I talked out of all those schools. I probably talked to KU the most, or they would hit me up the most. So I was kind of following along those lines, and then I started like right after spring break in my junior year, started rolling in a few of those offers, and I think I can't remember who my first South Dakota State was my first one. So having that opportunity to kind of see kind of like what I remember I had talked about this and something I was doing in Springfield. Like we had the opportunity to play South Dakota State, North Dakota State back to back, and it was for me, no matter what level you're at, that is like the pinnacle of like football. You know, when you look at football at its purest form, those programs are presented in a great manner. So being able to get an offer like that from a school is great. And then I obviously got the rest of Missouri Valley like conference offers. Granted, we're kind of in the middle, like in terms of like a lot of the Missouri Valley conferences are surrounding Kansas City. I did not know much about them. Like I'd heard of a few. Like I'd heard of UNI. I had heard of Missouri State. Obviously, everyone knows them, North Dakota State. So for me, I'm like, what are these schools? And I really, as I got down here, I'm like, I'm glad I got to play in some of these schools. But it was very interesting seeing Missouri Valley Conference offers. And I'm like, I really don't know much about these schools, but they actually produce a lot of good football players and have good football. So that was one of the things I learned a lot about during recruiting.
Yeah, I was trying to do some research when I searched up your name on rivals.com, the things that came up again, like you had mentioned, a lot of the Missouri Valley, also potential of attending some of the military academies.
Yeah,
I thought that was very interesting. But dude, ultimately you ended up choosing Missouri State, and so uh, tell me why Missouri State, man, and what makes that school so special for you?
yeah, it was actually one of the so Steck was that Dave Steckel that originally was my original like coaching staff that got me down there, and he was obviously on the Mizzou coaching staff defensive side for a very long time, and so we had a pretty good relationship with one of my head coach because we had Shane Ray out of my age that ended up playing at Mizzou for Steck, and so I remember obviously Shane being a really good edge rusher. Like that was somebody I'm like, okay, if he was able to coach Shane was able to go, I think, first round. Like that's somebody that I would like to play for. So once I got down to like who I wanted to play for and the time or who I wanted to play for, kind of the scheme that I liked, I'm like, okay, if Shane was able to do this with him at Mizzou and now this man's the head coach at his own institution and I still get to play some competitive ball, like it would be kind of foolish for me not to go play for that coaching staff and learn as much as possible.
Gotcha. And again, we had mentioned attended Missouri State for 6 years. Um, again, actually pretty good program. I mean, despite, obviously playing up against that top competition that you had mentioned, of course. Talk a little bit about that defense and your role in said defense.
Yeah. So obviously each year it was different because like I had Steck my first year and then I ended up getting Coach Petrino and his staff right after like my first semester of playing like a full semester of football. So I was able to kind of I guess it was great that it happened earlier in my career because sometimes it's hard to unlearn a new defense
Mhm.
and learn a completely new one. And so but luckily I've had Coach Scott as like a position coach for the last 5 years. So I was able to learn, pick up on that defense. And it got to a point where there was nothing I can really do in terms of like, I knew everything that was coming, what pressure was coming, how we're setting everything. So I was able to be very flexible. And that defense, I was able to rush off the edge, able to rush inside if need be able to do a lot of the things that I feel like a lot of edge players don't always do sometimes. And it was unique because that's how I started playing when I was a younger guy. Is that he liked me pass rushing, so then he ended up putting me inside, and I got to play alongside some really experienced guys interiorly, and be able to use my speed to kind of beat them and set everything up, you know. And so that was really fun. That I was able to gain versatility in this defense, especially rushing from wherever, because I feel like sometimes we kind of pigeonhole ourselves and trying to rush off the edge, but being comfortable enough to rush inside too, I think has set me apart. And that's why that's how I ended up playing early. And that's how I feel like it developed me as a pass rusher, knowing kind of the things that like my D tackles have to do in order to win, or some of the selfless things they have to do sometimes. And like, okay, I know they have to do that, so now I have to win this way. And I feel like sometimes as edge rushers, we don't always take that into account.
So, Jalen, I'm just taking all this in as you're talking, and really the one of the key things that comes across to me is a guy with you know pretty good football IQ. I mean, obviously, it does kind of stink to have a couple coaches along the way, but in doing so, allows a guy like you to be to soak all of that in and to really utilize that and get the most out of that for yourself as a player. Um, how would you perhaps answer the question in that? What do you feel is perhaps your best attribute as a player? Is it that, or is it more than that?
Um, I do think having a high football intelligence takes you very far in this game. Granted, as a D lineman, so my coach always jokes like it's not really hard to coach D line. You just kind of tell them to go one direction, and that's kind of what it is. But I mean, obviously, if you reduce everybody's job to like a few things, it all sounds pretty simple. But I would say one of my biggest attributes is to be able to kind of retain knowledge pretty quickly and be able to apply it, which I don't think many people. Some it takes a while to apply it, and I think me being able to do that does put me at an advantage. And I think overall, like obviously experience, and then I think being able to, like I said, rush inside, I think has set me up as well, just because that takes a lot of strength. Even if you are fast, like you have to have some wrestling integrity there. And just because I can beat you on the outside doesn't mean I should. And having the strength to kind of like absorb those hits and the hands to kind of like shed them and get them off me, I think I would say overall probably like the use of my like the ability of my hands with my versatility slash experience and intelligence, football intelligence is probably one of my biggest attributes.
Gotcha. Jalen, not too long ago, I actually had the opportunity to interview one of your teammates in
Mhm.
Darian Smith. And of course, both of you guys, create most of the pass rush there for Missouri State. Talk a little bit about how you guys play off of one another and really how you guys, I don't know, how the relationship there is there for you two.
It's so funny because Darian and I have played the least amount of time together, but I think we probably did the most amount of damages I've done with anybody because he came like the latter half of my career, whereas there was guys I played with for the bulk of it. And it's funny because I joke with Darian all the time about how I'm like, inside on some of these plays, like I don't know if this is what if this would have happened in terms of like I. It's very easy for pass rushers to get greedy, and I think you see that time and time again, even in the NFL. It's like they think they should do this, and then they get gashed. And a quarterback who wasn't very mobile was gashing a defense for 15 yards just because he has a wide open lane. And so I talk about that all the time. Like, you are so lucky I like to do my job. And I like to play because if I didn't, this play wouldn't happen. But no, it's funny because he's always talking about knowing your personnel in terms of like on his side. So he knows what to do when certain people are on the field, as do I. But Darian knows he can freestyle a little bit in the pass rush while I'm out there because he knows that edge is going to be there, or he knows if I'm rushing inside and I'm going to cover him. And so he'll go out there and be like, I'm doing. There was one time, I think one of his best games, which was funny, and we were going back and forth because we're out there in one of our pass rush packages, and I'm rushing inside, and he goes, cover me, cover me, cover me. This is what I'm doing. And I'm like, okay, I covered you the last like 6 reps. Like I need to eat too a little bit. And so we're going back and forth. And then he ends up like I think getting like a strip sack, or he ended up getting something. It was very funny because I'm like, I was mad because not that he got it, because I'm like, Jesus, if I just would have like said, if I really would have like put my foot down and like actually did that, I'm like, wow, that could have been me, or that could have been somebody else. But being able to have a player like that, who I think in a way somewhat matches my intelligence, whereas it's hard because someone with who might not have had as much experience at their last school and fully gotten to play a lot more, it's very rare that you see a lot of them that have that much football intelligence. And having someone like him, it was actually really fun because it allowed me to kind of take a step back as well. So that was one of the cool things.
No, I think it's a dude, it's a great story. I mean, obviously, you have a guy who plays alongside you, or sometimes gets a whole lot of the glory. Let's just, say it how it
Rushing
is.
inside, yeah, it's a
But you
thankless.
yourself, I mean, it does take a person, understanding that this is a team game, and maybe I'm not the guy always making the plays. Maybe I got to set things up on my end. Maybe I have to, you know, set that edge, get that taken care of so that my guy it can be the one to make the plays. So even though you're not the one maybe always getting the stat on the stat line,
Yeah.
kudos for you for setting that up for him is basically what I'm trying to say. Um, some other people obviously have really made you into the person and player you are, whether it be some of your teammates, coaches. Who would that be for you? Who would you say is maybe one of the most influential person or people throughout your development as a player?
I would say I do have a unique experience that I've had technically 3 different head coaches, but overall just 2 coaching staff. So I've had 2 position coaches technically, but I've had one of my position coaches for 5 seasons. So we've been able to kinda grow as a player and a coach. Obviously, like, me first him getting into a new school, trying to figure out his personnel, and then me being able to be someone that he's wanted to keep for 5 years, and then growing in my ability to play, like, starting off, you know, doing, like, a few plays a game where I'm rushing inside to end up ultimately becoming a starter for him, and then being able for him to trust me. Not too many coaches will trust, no matter how good you are, will trust a DN to go rush inside, especially in this conference because you got some big guys in there. So for him to kind of see me as somebody that he doesn't have to worry about, that he can just go sit out there and, like, he's gonna do his job, and 2, he's gonna make a play for us, because it's easy to do your job, but at the end of the day, like, you need players who can go out there and actually win their one-on-ones, and so, like, him trusting me enough to do that, and then I would say we also had the unique experience, like, our playbook was granted, they simplified it a lot as I've grown, but our playbook was very complex. Like, it's not something that, like, typically your good defenses, you run about 3 coverages, about 4 different types of pressures, and that's it. We probably doubled the pressures, doubled all that other stuff. So it's like to play for us as a defense, like, you have to have a certain level of understanding of your job and what everything else that's going around. So for him to trust me to go out there and do that, play after play after play in crucial moments, I think helped evolve me as a player and helped give me gain. I helped gain the. It gave me the confidence that I needed to go out there and try and compete and be the best person that I can be, the best football player I can be.
Yeah, Jalen, I was looking at some of your highlights and just looking at this past season. I mean, had a pretty solid game against UT Martin. Were
Hmm.
you able to get a couple sacks? I believe both of which were in the second quarter of that game. Can you walk me through your favorite sack that you had this past season, whether it be in that game or some other game?
Ooh, this was tough. Oh gosh, I gotta think. Um, I'd probably say that one. That game was fun just for the simple fact that there's some teams that we played UT Martin 2021 in the playoffs, and then they beat us. So then we started playing in the last couple of years, and we did not play very well against them last year. So this year was kind of a year that past season was one of the years that our coaches were like, okay, we can't let this, like, last season left a bad taste in our mouth. So we need to go out there and do what we need to do to win. So that was what they were kind of telling us the whole entire week. So to go out there and do that against a team like that, who is always one of the top teams in the OVC, so it was really fun to get. They're still a pretty good team. They're always a playoff contending team. So going out there and dominating against a team like that, and going out there and actually play very well against him, that was fun. I would say Ball State, that one was fun too, because I think that just set the tempo. Granted, we ended up not performing the way I really wanted us to, but I would say especially first half that defense, we were playing very very well, good ball, a very good ball, and so going out there and kind of like that kind of set the tempo. I felt like for me and be able to, like, I think it was the first drive that I got the sack on, it allowed us to kind of slow down and actually like go out there and fully kind of take a breath and be okay, get the jitters out, and then go out there and actually compete and to overall put a decent game together. So I would say between those two are probably my favorites.
Awesome. So definitely some games to go back to and check out. I know again, like you had mentioned, a game against Ball State didn't exactly go the way that you wanted, but I mean, when you're up against an FBS opponent, it's always nice to be able to pretty much go toe to toe with
Mm-hmm.
them to say, you can play at that level if you get the opportunity. So.
Mm-hmm.
Um, no, Jalen, we've been talking about you and your journey, of course, and had a solid career there with Missouri State, really being one of the guys who coaches leaned upon as a lot of changes were happening. But hey, man, you've obviously closed the door on that, and we're moving forward for a guy who really wants to get into the league. Um, as we kind of shut the door on you and your collegiate journey, I want to meet the guy. I want to meet the guy under the helmet. So, tell me a little bit about you that you want to share with people, man. Other than you as a football player, like any unique, fun facts or something you want to share about yourself, or what, man? Can you
Yeah,
list some
I think
hobbies or give me something?
I think one of the things I always tell people, which I often forget sometimes too, is that I was actually a band kid for like 8 years up
All right.
throughout senior high school. So yeah, I started in like the sixth grade, and then I played until my senior year, so right before graduation probably. So I can play a few instruments, still can
So,
read.
so rattle them off real quick. What instruments can you play?
I start off with the tuba, and I started off with the baritone, switched to the tuba, and then I picked up sax throughout high school. And so I just played, I think, I know for sure it was a tenor sax. I played alto all throughout high school, but I played the tenor sax. I want to say I even played the bari sax for a little bit over the summer. And so I've been able to play all those instruments. Granted, there's not really that much of a difference, but it's still a slight difference where you could say you play an alto saxophonist. I'm not going to say they're a soprano saxophonist or like bari sax unless they actually can play it, even though we can. But I'll actually just recently, over, I think, Christmas, like winter break, I was like, I don't know. I saw this TikTok, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go buy a harmonica. And so I started playing. I started playing the harmonica a couple months, like a month and a half ago. So
All
that's kind
right.
of fun.
Do you still consider yourself somewhat musically inclined? I mean, is this
Yeah,
something
I
that
have.
you can pick up pretty easily or what?
Yeah, I can go pick like my saxophone is in my apartment at school, but it's been with me in my place for the last 2 years, 2.5, 3 years. So if I want to pick it up and go read some music, I absolutely can.
I mean, any of your teammates try and put you on spot and say, "Hey, man, why don't you go play your sax for us for a little bit?" I mean,
Yeah,
has that ever happened?
not too many of them know. Not too many of them know.
See, now with this interview, everyone's going to know. So somebody's going to say, "Hey, come play a little bit." So,
Yeah.
if you had to go, maybe do like a solo song or something on the sax, what would be your go-to?
Oh, sax is tough. Because you have the jazz guys, but I don't know if I would. I'd probably, if I really wanted to like showcase some ability, I'd probably just do some improvisation, improv type stuff, um, and just be in a location where you're kind of just free balling
All
with a whole
right.
bunch of
I
musicians.
mean, it's a jazzy instrument, so I mean, you can kind of get away with doing those things. You just
Yeah.
kind of, you know, pick a key and roll with it. So, um, cool. Anything else that you can share about yourself? I mean, obviously a Kansas City native. And so when I think of Kansas City, I think of things like barbecue or whatever. Like
Michigan
what's the
Country
big thing
Absolutely.
about you and your hometown?
Yeah, I that's funny because now I go to I've always gone to school with a whole bunch of Texans, but it seems like it's increased as of recent. So that's one of the things that I feel like I'm always constantly arguing about is that Kansas City barbecue is 101. Um, that and also my Chiefs are rolling a little bit right now, so I have a few bragging rights. I feel like when it comes to Kansas City, it's like we have a good football here overall. I think we also are a subton like hub of football outside of the Chiefs itself. Like I think this area
Sure.
was criminally under recruited before me and even after me. It's getting a little bit it's increasingly getting better, but I would say we're like a sleeper city. And then with in that regard, and I think it's widely accepted. I just think Texans don't want to ever like accept that somebody's better at anything than them. So I always tell people all the time, it's like our barbecue's the best. Like
All
it's
right,
okay.
all right. That's good. See if I can get maybe one more thing out of you before we wrap things up here. So, um, is there perhaps a celebrity that you'd love an opportunity to meet, whether it be an actor, musician, or an athlete? Who would that be for you?
So that's a tough question. Because now I'm like, do I go athlete, do I go musician? Um, Probably I feel like LeBron.
Fair
I
enough. I
but
get
like
that
yeah,
one a lot.
well yeah, even when I played basketball, the Heat used to come to Kansas City for like those exhibition games. And one time we were like on the court and they high fived us. So like technically I met him. He doesn't remember me, but so I was like trying to
One
think
high
of
five. That's all it
yeah.
takes.
Hey, hey, yeah, we're
Hey,
friends.
didn't wash that hand for maybe a couple of days. So
No, exactly.
cool, Jalen. Obviously, we need to wrap up our time here. It's been fun, learning about you and your journey. As we close up shop, go ahead and tell all these scouts out there what makes you a great addition to their professional team. And end us with your closing thoughts.
Yeah, I think having a player who's able to kind of take coaching and apply it and improve his game and help improve the team's overall efficacy is very important. And I think me being a player with experience going into professional ball like helps out a lot. Granted, there are a lot of players who go in with a lot of decent game experience, but not many of them have as much experience as I do. Or like that's just the unique thing of like COVID hitting us the way that it did. So being able to have someone like me who's been able to play the game from different positions and being able to play the game with the experience that I have, and at least with the pretty good football IQ, I think can make a decent football player in any level. So I think being receptive to that would be very great. I'll be very grateful for it.
Sure, man. I mean, again, fairly successful this season with 6.5 sacks. Very experienced guy who can come in and be a leader. Again, Jalen, appreciate you, man, and want to wish you all the best moving forward. All right.
I think you appreciate it.
Sure. Once again, I got Jalen Williams, edge rusher out of Missouri State. Check him out.
Thank you.